Top U.S. Border Patrol Agent Greg Bovino and some of his immigration enforcement officers are expected to leave Minneapolis today following calls to stop the Trump administration's immigration crackdown.
That the federal government doesn't have any right to try to flood us, threaten us with retribution, and to coerce the state of Minnesota into complying with Trump policy.
So that is Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison calling for an end to the weeks-long operation in Minneapolis and St. Paul's. This follows the second fatal shooting of a U.S. citizen, second one being Alex Peretti, over the weekend. The Atlantic reporting Bovino will return to his former role in California, where then he is expected to retire soon. For a closer look at how the Twin Cities are responding, I'm joined by Jason DeRusha, a journalist and radio host in Minneapolis. Good morning. Welcome to Your Morning.
Good morning, Anne-Marie.
Before we get to the events of that and what happened last night, how does Minneapolis feel right now? What's it like to live and work in that region?
There's a heaviness, Anne-Marie, especially for people who live in sort of certain zones that are where many of our immigrants have settled. So Minneapolis and St. Paul individually are not giant cities. And so you have 3,000 U.S. federal agents in the Twin Cities right now. Our Minneapolis police force only has 600 officers. So in certain parts of our community, you are seeing federal agents, masked, unmarked vehicles every day running through your neighborhood.
You see them wherever you're at the grocery store, at the coffee shop, if you're running errands.
I mean, it's not universal. I don't want to make it sound like, because they are also covering a wide geographical area in the state of Minnesota and our region. But I have seen them on the highway. I have seen them in the neighborhoods. People see them.
Okay. This move about removing the top border agent could seem like a concession move. You know, this is after the conversation with the governor. We know right now, too, there are two major court hearings. The first case has been brought forward by the state and the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul's, and it asks for a temporary halt to the immigration operation. The second case follows a temporary restraining order against Homeland Security related to the killing of Alex Peretti. What is the latest on both of these cases on the legal front?
No ruling in either of those cases, but there is activity here. And that's really the theme of what has happened over the last 24 hours. After a long time of political comment, of speech, of anger, of community coming together in visible protest, you have some action in the courts, and the courts are going to rule soon. They will rule soon. The most interesting case, I think, is that 10th Amendment U.S. constitutional case, where this state is basically saying the federal government has violated our right to exist as an individual state, that this force is so overwhelming, and no one in Minnesota asked for it, and there was no emergency per se. It's not like there was a flood or a tornado or an invasion.
Right.
And so we'll see if the judge will rule there. The political process, Anne-Marie, may work faster. So we'll see what happens with that. I mean, the move with Greg Bovino being kicked out, it's not just a change of personality. There's been quite a bit of reporting to indicate it's a change in approach. Do you enforce immigration by getting everyone out who is undocumented or in the process or whatever? Or do you target, as the Trump administration has been claiming to be doing, the worst of the worst?
I want to ask you about perhaps a shift among Trump supporters, particularly because Alex Peretti was a legal gun owner. He was carrying at the time of his death with a permit. The first assistant U.S. attorney for the Central District of California said on X, if you approach law enforcement with a gun, there's a high likelihood they will legally be justified to shoot you. And then here's the response from the NRA. This sentiment from the first assistant U.S. attorney for the Central District of California is dangerous and wrong. Responsible public voices should be awaiting a full investigation, not making generalizations and demonizing law-abiding citizens. What do you make of this critical stance from the NRA?
You know, this plays out every single time a legal gun owner is involved in some sort of confrontation where people imprint their own politics on the situation. And that's not how the Constitution works. You may or may not like it, but in the United States, there is a right to bear arms in the Second Amendment to the Constitution. And in Minnesota, people do have a right to file for a permit to carry. Now, would I carry a gun into this situation? Who cares what I would do? It doesn't matter. And so it is outrageous, I think, that people imprint their politics instead of waiting for an investigation.
Jason DeRusha, journalist and radio host in Minneapolis. Great to have your perspective this morning. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.